Looks like I'm live. Sometime in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride. If I have things that you need to borrow, for no one can fill those of your needs that you don't let show. So just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. Lean on me when you're not strong. I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. For it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. So just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. Lean on me when you're not strong. I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. If there is a load you have to bear that you can't carry, I'm right up the road. I'll share your load if you'll just call me. Lean on me when you're not strong. I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Lean on, lean on. Hope you guys are doing well tonight. This is installment 6 of a novella from 1866. 6 out of 6. This is the finale. We've been through Colin through his misadventures, his discovery of the changeling, his growing up. And now we're ready to see what happens in the end. Here we are. So it all comes full circle. It's a fairy tale after all. George MacDonald was a Scottish author and a buddy of Lewis Carroll's and a hero of C.S. Lewis and Neil Gaiman and a few people like that. So this is it. Hope you'll check out installments 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Available in fossilized form on my page. Chapter 11, The Goblin Cobbler. When he came to himself, he lay on the moor still. He got up and gazed around. The moon was up, but there was no hut to be seen. He was sorry enough now that he had been so foolish. He called, "Jenny, Jenny," but in vain. What was he to do? Tomorrow was the 8th of the 9 days left, and if before 12 at night the following day he had not rescued his boy, nothing could be done, at least for 7 years more. True, the year was not quite out till about 7 the following evening, but the fairies, instead of giving days of grace, always take them. He could do nothing but begin to walk, simply because that gave him a shadow more of a chance of finding the cobblers than if he sat still. But there was no possibility of choosing one direction rather than another. He wandered the rest of that night and the next day. He could not go home before the hour when the cobbler could no longer help him. Such was his anxiety that although he neither ate nor drank, he never thought of the cause of his gathering weakness. As it grew dark, however, he became painfully aware of it, and was just on the point of sitting down exhausted upon a great white stone that looked inviting, when he saw a faint glimmering in front of him. He was erect in a moment and making towards the place. As he drew near, he became aware of a noise made up of many smaller noises, such as might have proceeded from some kind of factory. Not till he was close to the place could he see that it was a long, low hut, with one door and no windows. The light shone from the door, which stood wide open. He approached and peeped in. There sat a multitude of cobblers, each on his stool with his candle stuck in the hole in the seat, cobbling away. They looked rather little men, though not at all of fairy size. The most remarkable thing about them was that at any given moment they were all doing precisely the same thing, as if they had been a piece of machinery. When one drew the threads in stitching, they all did the same. If Colin saw one wax his thread and looked up, he saw that they were all waxing their thread. If one took to hammering on his lapstone, they did not follow his example, but all together with him they caught up their lapstones and fell to hammering away, as if nothing but hammering could ever be demanded of them. And when he came to look at them more closely, he saw that every one was blind of an eye, and had a nose turned up like an awl. Every one of them, however, looked different from the rest, notwithstanding a very close resemblance in their features. The moment they caught sight of him, they rose as one man, pointed their awls at him, and advanced toward him like a closing bush of aloes, glittering with spikes. "Fine upper leathers," said one and all, with a variety of accordant grimaces. "Top of his head, good paste bowl," was the next general remark. "Coarse hair, good ends," followed. "Sinews, good thread." "Bones and blood, good paste for 7 leaguers." "Ears, good loops to pull 'em on with. Pair short now." "Soles, same for queen's slippers." And so they went, portioning out his body in the most irreverent fashion for the uses of their trade, till, having come to his teeth, and said, "Teeth, good brads," they all gave a shriek like the whisk of the waxed threads through the leather, and sprung upon him with their awls drawn back like daggers. There was no time to lose. The old woman with the spindle," said Colin. "Don't know her," shrieked the cobblers. "The old woman with the distaff," said Colin, and they all scurried back to their seats and fell to hammering vigorously. "She desired me," continued Colin, "to ask the cobbler for a lump of his wax." Every one of them caught up his lump of wrought rosin and held it out to Colin. He took the one offered by the nearest and found that all their lumps were gone,
after which they sat motionless and stared at him. "But what am I to do with it?" asked Colin. "I will walk a little way with you," said the one nearest, "and tell you all about it. The old woman is my grandmother, and a very worthy old soul she is." Colin stepped out at the door of the workshop, and the cobbler followed him. Looking round, Colin saw all the stools vacant and the place as still as an old churchyard. The cobbler, who now in his talk, gestures, and general demeanour appeared a very respectable, not to say conventional little man, proceeded to give him all the information he required, accompanying it with the present of one of his favourite awls. They walked a long way, till Colin was amazed to find that his strength stood out so well. But at length the cobbler said, "I see, sir, that the sun is at hand. I must return to my vocation. When the sun is once up, you will know where you are." He turned aside a few yards from the path and entered the open door of a cottage. In a moment the place resounded with the soft hammering of 313 cobblers, each with his candle stuck in a hole in the stool on which he sat. While Colin stood gazing in wonderment, the rim of the sun crept up above the horizon, and there the cottage stood, white and sleeping, while the cobblers, their lights, their stools, and their tools, had all vanished. Only there was still the sound of the hammers ringing in his head, where it seemed to shape itself into words, something like these. A good deal had to give way to the rhyme, for they were more particular about their rhymes than their etymology. Dub-a-dub, dub-a-dub, cobbler's man, hammer it, stitch it as fast as you can. The weekday ogre is wanting his boots, the trip-a-trap fairy is going barefoots. Dream daughter has worn out her heels and her toeses for want of cork slippers to walk over noses. Spark eye the smith may shoe the nightmare, the kelpie and pookie, the 9-footed bear. We shoe the mermaids the tips of their tails, stitching the leather onto their scales. We shoe the brownie, clumsy and toeless, and then he goes quiet as a mole or a molus. There is but one creature that we cannot shoe, and that is the boneless, all made of glue. A great deal of nonsense of this sort went through Colin's head before the sounds died away. Then he found himself standing in the field outside his own orchard. Chapter 12. The Wax and the Awl. The evening arrived. The sun was going down over the sea, cloudless, casting gold from him lavishly, when Colin arrived on the shore at some distance from his home. The tide was falling, and a good space of sand was uncovered and lay glittering in the setting sun. This sand lay between some rocks and the sea, and from the rocks innumerable runnels of water that had been left behind in their hollows were hurrying back to their mother. These occasionally spread into little shallow lakes resting in hollows in the sand. These lakes were in a constant ripple from the flow of the little streams through them. And the sun shining on these multitudinous ripples, the sand at the bottom shone like brown silk watered with gold, only that the golden lines were flitting about like living things, never for a moment in one place. Now Colin had no need of fairy ointment to anoint his eyes and make him able to see fairies. Most people need this, but Colin was naturally gifted. Therefore, as he drew near a certain high rock, which he knew very well, and from which many streams were flowing back into the sea, he saw that the little lakes about it were crowded with fairies, playing all kinds of pranks in the water. It was a lovely sight to see them thus frolicking in the light of the setting sun, in their gay dresses, sparkling with jewels or what looked like jewels, flashing all colors as they moved. But Colin had not much time to see them, for the moment they saw him, knowing that this was the man whom they had wronged by stealing his child, and knowing, too, that he saw them, they fled at once up the high rock and vanished. This was just what Colin wanted. He went all round and round the rock, looked in every direction in which there might be a pool, found more fairies here and there, who fled like the first up the rock and disappeared. When he had thus driven them all from the sands, he approached the rock, taking the lump of cobbler's wax from his pocket as he went. He scrambled up the rock and, without showing his face, put his hand on the uppermost edge of it, and began drawing a line with the wax all along. He went creeping round the rock, still drawing the wax along the edge till he had completed the circuit. Then he peeped over. Now, in the heart of this rock, which was nearly covered at high water, there was a big basin, known as the Kelpie's Pool, filled with seawater and the loveliest seaweed and many little sea animals, and this was a favorite resort of the fairies. It was now, of course, crowded. When they saw this big head come peeping over, they burst into a loud fit of laughter and began mocking him and making game of him, and in 100 ways. Some made the ugliest faces they could, some queer gestures of contempt, others sung bits of songs, and so on, while the queen sat by herself on a projecting corner of the rock, with her feet in the water, and looked at him sulkily. Many of them kept on plunging and swimming and diving and floating while they mocked him, and Colin would have enjoyed the sight much if they had not spoiled their beauty and their motions by their grimaces and their gestures. "I want my child," said Colin. "Give him his child," cried one. Thereupon a dozen of them dived and brought up a huge sea slug, a horrid creature like a lump of blubber, and held it up to him, saying, "There he is, come down and fetch him." Others offered him a blue lobster, struggling in their grasp, others a spider crab, others a whelk, while some of them sung mocking verses, each capping the line the others gave. At length they lifted a dreadful object from the bottom. It was like a baby with his face half eaten away by the fishes, only that he had a huge nose like the big toe of a lobster. But Colin was not to be taken in. "Very well, good people," he said. "I will try something else." He crept down the rock again, took out the little cobbler's awl, and began boring a hole. It went through the rock as if it had been butter, and as he drew it out, the water followed in a far-reaching spout. He bored another, and went on boring till there were 313 spouts gushing from the rock, and running away in a strong little stream toward the sea. He then sat down on a ledge at the foot of the rock and waited. By and by, he heard a clamor of little voices from the basin. They had found the water was getting very low, but when they discovered the holes by which it was escaping, "He's got Doddlecobs all! He's got Doddlecobs all!" they cried with one voice of horror. When he heard this, Colin climbed the rock again to enjoy their confusion. But there I must explain a little. In the former part of this history, I showed how fond these fairies were of water, but the fact was they were far too fond of it. It had grown a thorough dissipation with them. Their business had been chiefly to tend and help the flowers in which they lived, and to do good offices for everything that had any kind of life about them. Hence their name of good people. But from finding the good the water did to the flowers, and from sharing in the refreshment it brought them, flowing up to them in tiny runnels through the veins of the plants, they had fallen in love with the water itself for its own sake, or rather for the pleasure it gave to them, irrespective of the good it was to the flowers which lived upon it. So they neglected their business, and took to sailing on the streams, and plunging into every pool they could find. Hence the rapidity of their decline and fall. Again, on coming to the sea-coast, they had found that the salt water did much to restore the beauty they had lost by partaking of the Carasoyn. Therefore, they were constantly on the shore, bathing for ever in the water, especially that left in this pool by the ebbing tide, which was particularly to their taste, till at last they had grown entirely dependent for comfort on the sea-water, and they thought entirely dependent on it for existence also, at least such existence as was in the least worth possessing. Therefore, when they saw the big face of Colin peering once more over the ledge, they rushed at him in a rage, scrambling up the side of the rock like so many mad beetles. Colin drew back and let them come on. The moment the foremost put his foot on the line that Colin had drawn around the rock, he slipped and tumbled backwards, head over heels, into the pool, shrieking, "He's got Doddlecob's wax!" "He's got Doddlecob's wax!" screamed the next, as he fell backwards after his companion, and this took place till no one would approach the line. In fact, no fairy could keep his footing on the wax, and the line was so broad, for as Colin rubbed it, it had melted and spread, that not one of them could spring over it. The Queen now rose. "What do you want, Colin?" she said. "I want my child, as you know very well," answered Colin. "Come and take him," returned the Queen, and sat down again. Not now with her feet in the water, for it was much too low for that. But Colin knew better. He sat down on the edge of the basin. Unfortunately, the tail of his coat crossed the line. In a moment, half a dozen of the fairies were out of the circle. Colin rose instantly, and there was not much harm done, for the multitude was still in prison. The water was nearly gone, beginning to leave the very roots of the long tangles uncovered. At length, the Queen could bear it no longer. "Look here, Colin," she said, "I wish you well." And as she spoke, she rose and descended the side of the rock towards the water, not now far below her. She had to be very cautious, too. The stones were so slippery, though there was none of Doddlecob's wax there. About halfway below where the surface of the pool had been, she stopped and pushed a stone aside. Colin saw what seemed the entrance to a cave inside the rock. The Queen went in. A few moments after, she came out, wringing her hands. Oh dear, what shall I do?" she cried. "You horrid, thick people will grow up. He's grown to such a size that I can't get him out." "Will you let him go if I get him out?" asked Colin. I will. We shall all be starved to death for want of seawater if I don't," she answered. "Swear by the cobbler's awl and the cobbler's wax," said Colin. "I swear," said the Queen. "By the cobbler's awl and the cobbler's wax," insisted Colin. "I swear by the cobbler's awl and the cobbler's wax," returned the Queen. "In the name of your people?" "In the name of my people," said the Queen, "that none of us here present will ever annoy you or your family hereafter." "Then I'll come down," said Colin, and he jumped into the basin. With the cobbler's awl, he soon cleared a big opening into the rock, for it bored and cut it like butter. Then out crept a beautiful boy of about 10 years old into his father's arms, with eyes and ears and chin and cheek, all safe and sound. And he carried him home to his mother. It was a disappointment to find him so much of a baby at his age, but that fault soon began to mend, and the house was full of jubilation. And little Colin told them the whole story of his sojourn among the fairies. And it did not take so long as you would think, for he fancied he had only been there about a week. The end. Hope you'll check out the whole novella if you're just coming in now. 6 installments available on Facebook. I've also got a link if you go to my page and scroll down a little bit. I've put all 6 installments, links to them in one place for your convenience. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Been a fun little adventure in live streaming. I wish you all well. Be safe.